It all seemed like just another night on a talk show, until Stephen Colbert dropped a bombshell live on air, and the name Donald Trump echoed amid shocking evidence tied to Jeffrey Epstein. The studio fell silent. The audience leapt from their seats. Cameras panned quickly, and the stage lights seemed to burn hotter. Gone were the usual sarcastic quips. This time, Colbert wasn't here to joke. He came with files, photos, testimony, and all pointed to one name, Trump, a media shockwave, shaking what America thought it knew. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. As soon as the Late Show's theme music faded, the lights flared up, and Colbert stepped out with his familiar flair, sharp blue suit, a slightly mischievous smile, but his eyes were different, razor sharp. Across from him, Donald Trump sat in the guest chair, fingers lightly gripping the armrests, forcing a smile, but his eyes darted warily. Anderson Cooper stood center stage, his voice steady but chilling. Welcome to the Late Show. Tonight we're not talking entertainment. We're talking about Jeffrey Epstein and those who stood by his side. The audience roared, holding up signs reading "Release the files." Some shouted, "Tell us the truth." Colbert seized the moment, locking eyes with Trump. "Mr. Trump, thanks for being here. I know you're busy, lawsuits, campaigning, court appearances. But I have to ask, where are the Epstein files? You promised to release them. So why is my show nearly getting pulled off the air for mentioning it?" Trump forced a laugh, shrugging. "Stephen, you're just a host. Relax. I've thrown hundreds of parties. Tons of people show up. You think I remember everyone?" The audience let out a mocking chuckle. Someone yelled from the crowd, "Nobody believes that anymore." Colbert didn't miss a beat, dipping his head with a smile before cutting in, calm but devastating. "The thing is, not everyone was photographed grinning next to Epstein, in 5 pictures, 4 parties, and a wedding. You were." Trump's brow furrowed, and he sat up straighter. "Hey, that was 30 years ago. Who didn't go to parties in the 90s? Cooper stepped in, keeping the show on track. "We're not asking what parties you attended. We're asking, why is your name in the investigation files?" At that moment, the screen behind them lit up. A series of old images appeared. Trump shaking hands with Epstein. A fleeting video clip from Mar-a-Lago. A blurred-out witness statement. Colbert stepped closer to the screen, no longer looking at Trump, but straight into the camera. "We're not here to judge, but America has a right to know what's being hidden, and why." The audience erupted. A loud cry of "Keep it coming" ringing from the upper seats. Trump lowered his head slightly, swallowing hard. Now Colbert turned back, his gaze calm but resolute. "Tonight we're not chasing rumors, we're bringing evidence, and if you won't talk, the evidence will." Stephen Colbert, standing behind the host's desk, eyes gleaming with confidence, but burning with unrelenting resolve. He signaled the tech team, and the massive screen behind him blazed to life, displaying a crisp photo. Donald Trump, wide grin, standing next to Jeffrey Epstein, at Mar-a-Lago, chandeliers glinting off sparkling wine glasses. The audience gasped. Some whispered, eyes glued to the image. Colbert, voice low but sharp, stared straight at Trump. "Mr. Trump, that's you, isn't it? Beaming next to Epstein, not exactly the passing acquaintance you've claimed." Trump in the guest chair shrugged, trying to play it cool, but his fingers tapped relentlessly on the armrest, betraying his unease. "Stephen, it was just a party. Mar-a-Lago hosts thousands of people. I don't remember everyone. You're making a big deal out of this." His voice rang out, but the audience responded with mocking laughter, some shouting truth. The camera zoomed in, catching Trump's quick glance at Anderson Cooper, as if hoping for a lifeline. Colbert, not letting Trump off, stepped out from behind the desk, closing in on the guest chair. "One party? Not just one. Mr. Trump. Multiple times. Over years." He gestured, and the screen switched to another photo. Trump and Epstein at a Victoria's Secret event, both grinning brightly among glamorous models. The audience exploded, boos mixing with applause. "Is this a passing acquaintance, or a closer relationship than you're willing to admit?" Trump, face flushing red, shot up from his chair, pointing at the screen. "That's ancient history. I'm a businessman. I meet people. I party everywhere. What do you want, Stephen? To dig up my life for what?" But the audience wasn't buying it. The boos grew louder, someone holding up a glowing sign. "Release the files." Cooper, stone-faced, stepped in. "Mr. Trump, Mr. Colbert is asking about your relationship with Epstein. Can you confirm how many times you met him?" Trump shook his head, voice rising. I didn't count. I was busy building America, not keeping track of guys like Epstein. Colbert, with a cold smile, held up a thin stack of documents. You don't remember? Let me jog your memory. An old interview. You called Epstein a great friend who loves younger women. He signaled, and the screen played a clip. Trump, laughing heartily, praising Epstein on TV. The audience hissed, shouts of truth, echoing through the Late Show studio. Mr. Trump, those are your words. Not the media, not me. Want to take them back. Trump, visibly rattled, slammed his hand on the armrest. That clip's edited. The dirty media always twists my words. I didn't have a friend like Epstein, but the audience's boos drowned him out. Cooper, voice like steel, pressed on. Mr. Trump, that video is public evidence. If you didn't consider Epstein a friend, why did you say that? Trump, flustered, pivoted. Ask Obama. He's the one behind these schemes to take me down. The audience roared with laughter, some shouting, answer the question. In challenge, Colbert stood still, letting the audience's laughter bury Trump. Then he spoke, voice slow but heavy. Mr. Trump, you keep bringing up Obama, but we're talking about you, about Epstein, about these photos. He gestured, and the screen showed a new image. Trump, Epstein, and Ghislaine Maxwell at a Palm Beach party, laughing together. This isn't a coincidence, Mr. Trump. This is a pattern. Got anything to say? The audience stood, clapping wildly, signs reading Epstein files now, glittering under the lights. Trump, pale, tried to regain composure. Stephen, you're a liar. I've got nothing to do with that filth. I'm the cleanest guy you've ever met. But his voice cracked, and the audience responded with boos. Cooper, unrelenting, asked, Mr. Trump, if you're not involved, why do you keep showing up with Epstein and Maxwell? The public wants answers. Trump's eyes darted, hesitating, as if trapped by his own words. Colbert, sensing the upper hand, stepped closer, voice low but resonant. Mr. Trump, the Late Show audience isn't here for excuses. They want the truth. And the truth is, you were there with Epstein, not just once. He pointed to the crowd, where a woman held a glowing sign. Truth doesn't stay silent. They deserve to know why. The audience erupted, applause like thunder, chants of Colbert. Colbert, filling the studio. Stephen Colbert, leaving the desk, strode to the stage's center, holding a gray file, eyes sharp enough to pierce through Donald Trump. The giant screen behind him flared, displaying a flight log page, the words Lolita Express, in bold like an undeniable accusation. Whispers spread through the audience, like a breeze before a storm. Colbert, voice low but sharp as a blade, stared at Trump. Mr. Trump, we've seen you partying with Epstein. Now, let's talk about the flights. 7 times on Epstein's private jet. The Lolita Express, not a carpool, a notorious man's plane. Where were you going? And what were you doing? Trump, in the guest chair, tried to stay calm, but his fingers tapped incessantly on the armrest. Eyes flickering. Stephen, you're blowing this out of proportion. I fly everywhere, doing business, signing deals, Epstein's plane. Just a convenient ride. I don't check every pilot, but his voice wavered, and the audience jeered, some shouting answer. The camera zoomed in, catching Trump licking his lips, searching for an escape. Colbert, not letting Trump dodge, raised the file, voice ringing like a verdict. Convenient? This is the Lolita Express, not Uber. I have the flight logs here. Want to hear them? Without waiting, he opened the first page, reading aloud, each word pinning the air. 1 flight from Palm Beach to New York. You were there. Another from Miami to the Bahamas. 7 times, Mr. Trump. Who was with you? What was the purpose? The audience gasped, some standing, holding signs, reading release the files, glowing under the lights. Trump, face red, jumped up, pointing at the screen. That's fabricated. I don't know anything about those flights. I was busy saving America, not keeping track of nonsense. Maybe someone added my name. The audience burst into laughter, boos echoing, drowning his voice. Anderson Cooper, the moderator, leaned in, voice icy. Mr. Trump, you're saying your name was added to official flight logs without your knowledge? Can you clarify? Trump, flustered, pointed at Colbert. He's making it up. Him and the dirty media want to take me down. Colbert stood still, letting the audience's boos overwhelm Trump. Then he spoke, voice slow, but powerful. Mr. Trump, you once said not going to Epstein's island was a lack of honor. What honor? Flying on a man like Epstein's plane is honorable. The audience exploded, laughter mixing with cries of truth. Someone held up a sign, Lolita Express, truth, sparkling. Colbert, unflinching, pressed on. Mr. Trump, Mr. Colbert's question is clear. What was the purpose of those 7 flights? Trump, visibly panicked, roared. I didn't say honor. You're twisting my words, Stephen. I never went to that damn island. But the audience didn't buy it. Boos rolled like waves. Colbert, sensing his advantage, signaled, and the screen showed a hypothetical document, a passenger list with Donald J. Trump next to Ghislaine Maxwell. Mr. Trump, this is the passenger list. You were with Maxwell, still just business trips. Colbert asked, voice cutting like a knife. The audience stood, shouting, release the truth. Across the Late Show studio, Trump, pale, slammed his hand on the armrest. That's fake. I'll sue the people who made those papers. I don't know Maxwell. I don't know anything. But his defense only fueled the audience's anger. Cooper, voice sharp, asked, Mr. Trump, if these documents are fake, why haven't you released the Epstein files, as you promised voters? Trump fell silent, eyes darting backstage, but no one spoke up for him. The audience, sensing the silence, chanted truth, truth, like a relentless pulse. Colbert, stepping closer to the guest chair, voice low but powerful. Mr. Trump, the Late Show audience doesn't want to hear blame. They want to know why your name appears 7 times on Epstein's plane. If you're innocent, answer. He pointed to the crowd, where a man held a glowing sign, Epstein files. Now, Trump, trying to regain composure, shouted, Stephen, you're a liar. You want to destroy me, but I won't let you. But his words were drowned in boos, some shouting answer. Trump, the audience, still standing, raised signs, reading release the files, like torches illuminating the truth. Colbert, leaving the desk, stepped closer to the guest chair, holding a black-covered file, his eyes unrelenting, like a prosecutor in a final trial. The large screen behind flashed, displaying bold text, the cover-up network. Whispers spread through the studio, like waves crashing against rocks. Mr. Trump, Colbert began, his voice low like a blade slicing through the air. We've talked about parties, about flights. Now let's talk about the people you chose to keep this secret. People like Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, and Alan Dershowitz. Trump, seated in the guest chair, tried to maintain a defiant expression, but his hands clasped tightly, knuckles white, as if clinging to a crumbling wall. Stephen, you're dragging out this garbage again. I'm not covering up anything. I'm the most transparent person you've ever seen. But his voice trembled, and the audience responded with mocking laughter, mixed with shouts of truth. Colbert, not letting Trump evade, opened the file, his voice ringing like an alarm bell. Transparent? Then why did Pam Bondi, your attorney general, meet Ghislaine Maxwell in a private meeting, an Epstein accomplice, and Bondi met her? Why, Mr. Trump? He signaled, and the screen displayed a hypothetical memo, notes of the meeting, with Bondi's signature next to handling sensitive files. The audience gasped, some raising signs reading "Truth doesn't stay silent," glowing brightly under the stage lights. Trump, face flushed, stood up, pointing at the screen. That's fabricated. Bondi does her job, protecting justice. Where'd you get that nonsense? From the dirty press? But the audience wasn't convinced. Boos roared like crashing waves. Cooper, stern-faced, intervened. Mr. Trump, Mr. Colbert just made a serious allegation. Can you explain the meeting between Bondi and Maxwell? Trump, flustered, slammed his hand on the armrest. I don't know anything about that. Bondi's great, and you're trying to smear her. Colbert stood still, letting the audience's boos drown Trump. Then he continued, his voice slow but sharp as a blade. Not just Bondi. Todd Blanche, your personal lawyer, also met Maxwell, and Alan Dershowitz, who helped Epstein dodge a long sentence. You chose these people, Mr. Trump. Coincidence, he signaled, and the screen showed another hypothetical document, an email from Dershowitz to Trump, thanking him for support in the matter. The audience erupted, shouts of "Release the truth," and, echoing through the Late Show studio, a woman in the front row held a trembling sign, Epstein files now. Trump, now visibly panicked, shouted, it's all fake. I'm not tied to that filth. You and the media are trying to kill me. But the audience responded with louder boos, some shouting answer. Cooper, voice cold, pressed on. Mr. Trump, Mr. Colbert named people in your circle. If you're not involved, why are these people meeting Maxwell and defending Epstein? Trump, eyes darting, tried to pivot, asked the Democrats. They're behind this, trying to ruin me. Colbert, sensing the opportunity, stepped closer, his voice low but powerful. Mr. Trump, you keep blaming others, but we're talking about you, about Alex Acosta, whom you appointed labor secretary. He approved a lenient deal for Epstein, helping him avoid a harsh sentence. Why did you choose Acosta? He turned to the audience, voice full of emotion. Asterisk, the Late Show asterisk audience deserves to know why you surround yourself with Epstein's defenders. The audience stood, applause like thunder, signs reading, protect the truth, glowing under the lights. Trump, pale, tried to regain composure. Acosta's great. I didn't know about that deal. You're making this up, Stephen. But his words were drowned in booze. Cooper, unrelenting, asked, Mr. Trump, if you didn't know, why haven't you released the Epstein files as you promised voters? Trump, eyes darkening, didn't respond, as if trapped by his own words. The audience, sensing the silence, chanted truth, truth, like a relentless pulse. Colbert stood still, letting the silence weigh on Trump. Then he spoke, voice slow but resonant. Mr. Trump, this audience isn't here for excuses. They want to know why you chose people like Bondi, Blanche, Acosta. If you're innocent, why are you afraid to open the files? The audience erupted, applause like crashing waves, signs reading truth, will win, held high. Cooper raised a hand, signaling silence. Mr. Trump, the public watching The Late Show wants answers. Can you provide them? Trump, now clearly cornered, shook his head vigorously. This is a trap. I don't need to answer these stupid questions. But the audience didn't accept it. Boos echoed, some shouting, release the files. The camera zoomed in, capturing Trump biting his lip, sweat glistening on his forehead. Colbert, back at the desk, spoke softly but loud enough for the mic. Truth doesn't need excuses, Mr. Trump. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert's studio shook with tension, stage lights casting sharp shadows, as if etching every moment. The audience stood, signs reading truth, raised like torches in the charged atmosphere. Stephen Colbert, leaving the desk, stood tall, his usual humor replaced by rare resolve. His hand gripped a crumpled file, as if it held his entire career. The large screen behind flashed, showing bold text, the price of truth. The room fell silent, awaiting a storm. Colbert locked eyes with Donald Trump, voice firm, but sharp, cutting through the air. Mr. Trump, we've talked about parties, flights, and the people you chose to cover up. Now, let's talk about the price of asking questions. My show, The Late Show, is on the verge of cancellation. Why? Because I dared to challenge you. Trump, in the guest chair, tried to maintain an arrogant facade, but his hands gripped the armrests, as if holding a crumbling wall. Stephen, you're whining about your failing show. That's the market. CBS knows you're done. His voice rang out, but lacked confidence, and the audience responded with boos, some raising glowing signs. Protect the truth. The camera zoomed in, catching Trump swallowing hard, eyes darting backstage, seeking an escape. Colbert, unshaken, raised the file, voice ringing like a wake-up call. The market, or a warning? I have proof here. Paramount, CBS's parent company, paid you $16 million for an unclear lawsuit. Right after, my show gets canceled. What do you call that, Mr. Trump? A gift or a price? He signaled, and the screen showed a hypothetical contract, a $16 million payment from Paramount to Trump, the figure glaring like an accusation. The audience gasped, applause mixed with shouts of truth, echoing through the Late Show studio. Trump, face flushed, stood, pointing at the screen. That's a lie. I didn't pressure anyone. CBS canceled your show because no one watches you. You're a loser, Stephen. But the audience didn't buy it. Boos crashed like waves. Anderson Cooper, the moderator, stepped forward, voice cold but firm. Mr. Trump, Mr. Colbert just made a serious allegation.
Do you explain this $16 million payment?
Trump, flustered, pointed at Cooper. You're part of the dirty media too. I'm not involved. CBS made their choice, and I'm glad they did. Colbert stood still, letting the audience's boos drown Trump. Then he spoke, voice low but full of emotion, like a declaration.
One shot.
Mr. Trump, you can call me a loser, but you're not just targeting me. You're targeting press freedom. When you silence a show, you silence America. The audience erupted. Applause like thunder. Signs reading "Protect Democracy" raised high, glowing under the lights. A man in the front row shouted, "Don't silence Colbert." The camera zoomed in, capturing the audience standing, chanting "Truth" like a shared heartbeat. Trump, now clearly cornered, tried to regain composure. "You're overreacting, Stephen. Press freedom. You're just a clown reading a script, not a journalist." But his words were drowned in boos. Cooper, unflinching, pressed on. "Mr. Trump, if this payment is unrelated, why did it happen right before The Late Show was canceled? Can you clarify?" Trump, pale, shook his head vigorously. "I don't know anything about that. Ask Paramount, not me." But the audience responded with louder boos, some shouting, "Release the truth." Colbert, sensing the upper hand, stepped closer to the guest chair, voice powerful. "Mr. Trump, I do this show for the audience, for those who want the truth. But what do you want? A country where only your voice is heard." He turned to the audience, eyes meeting signs reading "Press Freedom," glowing brightly. "They're not here to watch me joke. They're here for the truth." The audience stood, clapping relentlessly. Chants of "Truth, truth," filling the studio. Cooper raised a hand, signaling silence. "Mr. Trump, Mr. Colbert has raised questions about press freedom. Will you commit to investigating this payment, as the transparent person you claim to be?" Trump, eyes darkening, shouted, "This is a trap. I don't need to answer these nonsense questions." But his silence only fueled the audience's anger. Boos roared like waves. Colbert, back at the desk, spoke softly but loud enough for the mic. "Mr. Trump, you can cancel my show, but you can't cancel the audience's hunger for truth." At The Late Show, the audience erupted. Signs reading "Truth will win" raised high, like a declaration of war. Anderson Cooper, the moderator, stepped center stage, voice low but powerful. "We've just witnessed a showdown for the truth, but the questions remain, and the public awaits answers." The audience erupted. Applause like crashing waves. Chants of "Truth" echoing through The Late Show studio. As the lights dimmed for a break, cameras panned across the audience, capturing excited, angry, and determined faces. An older woman, eyes red, held a sign, "Release Epstein's files," as if carrying the pain of millions watching at home. A group of young people in the back shouted, "Colbert's right," while some audience members in red, MAGA hats shook their heads, whispering to each other, eyes full of doubt. The studio atmosphere was like a furnace. Every clap, every sign, like a gust fanning the flames of debate. Outside the studio, the story spread like wildfire. In the control room, side screens showed rushed news tickers from outlets. Colbert challenges Trump. Show cancellation, allegations, shake public. A journalist in the press row, pen racing across a notebook, captured every moment, eyes never leaving the stage. Another reporter whispered into a mic, "This isn't just an episode of The Late Show. This is a defining moment." Major outlets, from CNN to the Washington Post, began publishing, describing how Colbert turned his desk into a battlefield for truth, while Trump floundered with unconvincing excuses. In the audience, a middle-aged man in a white shirt stood, raising his fist toward Colbert. "Don't let them take your show," he shouted, voice trembling but full of emotion. The crowd around him clapped wildly, as if fueling his call. A young woman near the exit held a sign, "Truth isn't for sale," like a manifesto. These signs, shimmering under the lights, weren't just the voice of the Late Show audience, but an echo of millions watching on screens, from small apartments to crowded bars. Jasmine Crockett, a Democratic politician, appeared on a side screen in the studio, voice sharp as a knife. "Trump wants us to forget Epstein, forget the flights, forget the $16 million payment, but we won't forget. Colbert is doing what many don't dare, demanding the truth." The audience erupted, applause like thunder, chants of "Truth" filling the studio. Crockett continued, "When The Late Show is threatened, it's not just about Colbert, it's about democracy, about the right to hear the truth." A woman in the front row stood, raising a sign, "Democracy lives," like a pledge. Meanwhile, a few Trump supporters, though sparse, tried to speak up. A man in a red hat shouted, "This is a smear. Trump's innocent." but his voice was quickly drowned by the crowd's boos. Another near the exit shook his head, whispering to a friend, "If Trump's hiding nothing, why won't he answer?" That question, though quiet, rippled through the air, like a crack in Trump's defensive wall. Journalists in the studio, pens racing, captured the audience's reactions in tense moments. A reporter from The Guardian scribbled, "Colbert has turned the Late Show into an arena for truth." A Politico commentator whispered to a colleague, "Trump's destroying himself. Every dodge makes him look guiltier." These articles, though not yet published, began shaping public opinion, turning the debate into an event far beyond the Late Show studio. Viewers at home, though absent, fueled the storm of reactions. In bars, living rooms, and offices across America, people debated fiercely. A mother in Chicago, watching with her kids, shook her head. "If Trump's innocent, why does he look so panicked?" A student in Boston, in a dorm, told a friend, "Colbert's doing what the press should have done long ago." These reactions, though unrecorded on air, testified to the impact of the showdown. At the Late Show, Cooper, center stage, signaled silence. "The public has spoken," he said, voice resounding. "They want the truth, Mr. Trump, and the Late Show is listening." The audience erupted again, applause, like thunder. Trump, eyes darkening, didn't respond. The camera zoomed in, capturing him lowering his head, as if the weight of the questions pressed on his shoulders. Colbert, back at the desk, eyes fixed on Trump. "We're not done," he said softly, voice full of resolve. The audience stood, signs reading "Truth Lives," raised high, like a promise that this fight wouldn't end. Colbert, his voice low but thundering, stared directly at Trump. "Mr. Trump, we've covered the parties, the flights, your team. Now, I have one final document. It shows you knew more about Epstein than you've admitted." Trump, in the guest chair, tried to maintain his arrogant facade, but his hands gripped the armrests tightly, as if clinging to a collapsing fortress. "Stephen, are you out of tricks?" "Another fake paper. I'm not scared of your dirty tactics." But his voice faltered, and the audience responded, with boos, some shouting, "Answer." The camera zoomed in, capturing Trump, biting his lip, eyes darting, as if searching for a hopeless escape. Colbert, unshaken, opened an envelope, pulling out a hypothetical document, his voice ringing like a final accusation. "This is a note, allegedly from Epstein, saying, 'Thank you, Donald, for keeping it quiet.' What do you have to say, Mr. Trump?" The audience erupted, gasps, mixing with shouts of truth. A man in the front row held a trembling sign, "Epstein files now." Trump, pale, stood abruptly, stepping toward backstage as if to flee. "That's fake. I never got a note from Epstein. You're trying to destroy me." But the audience roared, "Stay," forcing him to halt, eyes blazing with anger, but unable to hide panic. Anderson Cooper, the moderator, stepped forward, voice cold as steel. "Mr. Trump, Mr. Colbert just made a serious allegation. If this document is fake, will you commit to releasing all Epstein files, as you once promised?" Trump, flustered, returned to his chair, pointing at Cooper. "You're in on this too. I don't need to answer these filthy questions." But the audience didn't accept it. Boos crashed like waves, shouts of truth, echoing through the Late Show studio. A young woman held a glowing sign, "Democracy won't be silenced," shining under the lights. Colbert stood still, letting the silence weigh on Trump. Then he spoke, voice slow but powerful, as if carving each word into the air. "Mr. Trump, you promised transparency. You promised to release the Epstein files, but every time we ask, you dodge, you attack. If you're innocent, why are you so afraid of the truth?" The audience stood, applause like thunder, signs reading "Release the truth," raised high, like a declaration of war. The camera zoomed in on Trump, capturing him, lowering his head, sweat glistening on his forehead, as if trapped by his own promises. Trump, trying to regain composure, shouted, "I'm not afraid of anything. I made America great, and you, Stephen, are just a clown trying to ruin me." But his words were drowned in boos. A woman in the back row yelled, "Answer, Trump." Cooper, stern-faced, pressed on. "Mr. Trump, the question is clear. Will you release the Epstein files as you promised or not?" Trump, eyes darkening, didn't respond, as if the weight of the question silenced him. The audience, sensing the silence, chanted, "Truth, truth," like a relentless pulse. Colbert, stepping closer to the guest chair, voice low but resonant. "Mr. Trump, the Late Show audience isn't here for blame. They want the truth. If you're not involved, open the files. Let the American people judge for themselves." He turned to the audience, eyes meeting the glowing signs. They deserve to know. The audience erupted. Applause like crashing waves. Signs reading "Truth will win," raised high, like an unbreakable pledge. Cooper raised a hand, signaling silence. "Mr. Trump, this is your final chance. Do you have an answer?" Trump, sitting down, eyes darting, said nothing. The camera zoomed in, capturing him biting his lip, as if the weight of the questions had brought him down. Colbert, back at the desk, spoke softly but loud enough for the mic. "When truth calls, silence is the loudest answer." The audience stood, clapping relentlessly. Donald Trump, in the guest chair, lowered his head, eyes avoiding the camera, like a defeated warrior retreating. Anderson Cooper, the moderator, stood center stage, voice resounding like a final bell. "Tonight, at the Late Show, we asked questions. Though answers are missing, the audience won't stop searching." The audience erupted, applause like crashing waves, chants of truth echoing through the studio. Colbert, stepping away from the desk, looked directly at the audience, voice low but inspiring. "I might lose this stage, but if the price of truth is the Late Show, I'm willing to pay. For you, for a country where truth isn't silenced." He paused, eyes scanning the signs, as if memorizing each face. "This is our fight." The audience stood, clapping relentlessly. A woman raising a trembling sign. "Democracy lives," carrying the hope of millions watching. Trump, standing at the edge of backstage, whispered urgently to an advisor, as if afraid of being overheard. "This has to be stopped. Those files can't come out." But his eyes, dark and anxious, showed he knew he stood on a dangerous edge. The camera zoomed in, capturing him disappearing behind the curtain, his figure shrinking, as if swallowed by the weight of truth. Outside the studio, public reaction spread like wildfire across America. Side screens in the control room showed breaking news tickers. Colbert challenges Trump. Epstein files and press freedom take center stage. A journalist in the press row, pen racing, wrote Colbert turned the Late Show into a flag for truth. Another reporter, standing in a studio corner, whispered into a mic. Trump walked away, but the questions remain. America will remember tonight. Major outlets, from NBC to the New York Times, published stories highlighting how Colbert turned a talk show into a battleground for democracy, while Trump faltered before unanswerable questions. In the audience, an older man in a gray suit raised his fist toward Colbert. "Keep fighting, Stephen," he shouted, voice trembling but resolute. A young woman near the exit held a sign. "Truth isn't for sale," like a vow. These signs, glowing under the lights, weren't just the voice of the Late Show audience, but an echo of the public across America, from small homes to crowded coffee shops. Viewers at home, though absent, fueled the storm of public reaction. In bars, living rooms, and offices, people debated fiercely. A father in Texas, watching with family, shook his head. Trump couldn't answer. He's hiding something. A student in California, in a dorm, told a friend, Colbert did what the press should have done long ago. These reactions, though not broadcast, testified to the night's impact. Cooper, center stage, closed the show. Miss Asterisk. The Late Show asterisk asked questions. The public will decide the answers. He looked straight into the camera, as if speaking to millions. The Epstein files, and what they hide, will shape the future. The audience applauded like thunder, signs reading "Truth Lives," raised high. Colbert, stepping off the stage, paused before the audience, eyes meeting the signs. He bowed, like a warrior leaving the arena but not dropping his weapon. The camera zoomed in, capturing the moment, like a promise. The story Trump panics, as Stephen Colbert uncovers Epstein's secrets in shocking live takedown at the Late Show, reflects the polarized state and fight for truth in today's American society, where power, media, and the public collide fiercely. Details like photos of Trump and Epstein at Mar-a-Lago, the Lolita Express flight logs, and the roles of Pam Bondi or Alex Acosta in the cover-up suggest a power system capable of manipulating truth, much like accusations against political forces in America today controlling information. Trump's actions, dodging questions, blaming dirty media, or an Obama conspiracy, mirror familiar tactics in U.S. politics, where personal attacks often deflect scrutiny. The hypothetical $16 million payment from Paramount to cancel The Late Show raises fears about money and political pressure threatening press freedom, a pressing issue as major U.S. outlets face accusations of bias or influence from power. The Late Show audience's reaction, with signs reading truth and chants demanding Epstein's files, reflects the American public's thirst for transparency, but also the divide, as some Trump supporters dismiss the allegations. The lesson is that Americans must maintain critical thinking and demand accountability from leaders. In an era of chaotic information, as when Trump dismisses claims as fake, individuals must verify sources, support independent journalism, like Colbert's spirit, and actively engage in democracy through voting or open discussion. As The Late Show's sign Democracy Lives declared, truth prevails only when the public relentlessly fights for it. Subscribe to the channel to join The Late Show in continuing to expose the truth and keep secrets like the Epstein files from being buried. Thank you for standing with us, and see you in the next video to keep demanding justice.